Okay, so how is our privacy actually protected by law? Because we've seen the definition of privacy, we've seen what can be done when your privacy is breached, actually, what consequence it may have. You could get fired. So I would like to first focus on the difference between the European and American legislation on privacy. European legislation, there's a lot of legislation on privacy. We already saw it, it's regarded as a fundamental human right, the protection of personal data. So that's also enshrined in a large set of rules, directives, regulations, very much institutionalized by the European Union, and it's also implemented into all the different national member states. So privacy laws are very strict here. They also, the European Union is also advocating that we should all have also the right to protection of your privacy also means the right to be forgotten online. For instance, that all those nasty tweets, that you can delete them and they can actually also be really deleted, that you can delete your profile. So the right to be forgotten also is part of your privacy. Now to the US. In the US, privacy legislation has a far more consumer approach. So the European Union, very much a fundamental human right, and here we see it much more from a consumer-oriented approach. The reasoning for this, which I've actually based on a very interesting article on privacy on the books and on the ground in the Stanford Law Review, is that there isn't really a federal law on privacy, but it was much more left to the markets themselves to regulate privacy. It's very much, they very much deal with consumer trust, consumer confidence. As soon as consumers are not happy with certain aspects of your company, so for instance, you're not dealing with privacy in an adequate manner, companies feel the urge to change this, to keep their consumers happy. So you already see a difference. European Union very much human rights, US much more consumer oriented. So that results in a patchwork statutes in different states, so it differs in the US. And here we see the clash with the European and the US view on privacy when big corporations come to the European Union. Like Facebook, Google, all these companies are facing problems here with the very strict European privacy legislations. For this reason, they all now have privacy officers dealing with all these privacy issues because of the very strict European legislation on these things. So that's why also in Germany, for instance, Google Maps, you can see that they have to black out whole houses. That also is considered a breach of privacy. So you see a struggle between European strict privacy legislation and American consumer-oriented approach to privacy.
So this change, this different approach between the US and Europe sees certain interesting initiatives arise specifically in Europe. When users are discontented with certain changes in policy of these social media platforms. One of the interesting things I got this year was a message. I'm pretty sure that most Facebook users have seen this message, maybe have sent the message themselves, which is the message that I have to do someone a favor to actually prevent their status updates or likes, no, not the status updates, but the likes, specific likes that they make from ending up in that area right there, which is the ticker. That was a new feature of Facebook that was introduced, I think, in October or November, if I'm correct. And it was met with a lot of skepticism because what happens is when someone in your friends list likes a certain article, certain picture, does a status update, all those things, it gives us a heads up of that action. And users felt threatened in their privacy. They didn't want that, didn't like that. It struck me as odd myself because, you know, you are on Facebook, right? You want to be on Facebook. You want to take part in the Facebook experience, right? So I was intrigued by this specific message that I got from a lot of people. However, what I think people forget, users forget, is that when they sign up for Facebook or any other platform that they use for their social interaction, they agree to a user policy. You are agreeing to a user policy. You are basically, by putting in a checkbox, and for, let's be honest, for most of us not reading the fine print, we are agreeing that we share our personal data with a big platform called Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. LinkedIn is just as guilty of using our personal data. In July, there was a big row because LinkedIn announced that they had a new service, and they announced it very proudly, that they were going to use our personal preferences as users of LinkedIn to endorse products of clients of LinkedIn. So advertisers could use our profiles, our settings, to endorse their products without my consent. Basically only because I sometimes mentioned, I like this product, I like that. Yeah, sure, I like that. So that's pretty much an infringement of my privacy. I felt that as an infringement of privacy. And discontented users are very powerful because there was a big row and LinkedIn revoked that whole service. So users do have power. Discontented users have power to change things. Another one is Europe versus Facebook. We already heard that yesterday in the keynote speech by Anne Helmond. A very good initiative to problematize and to raise the discussion on what we can do and what we should do with our personal data online. But again, also strikes me a bit as odd because you sign up for a service that you want to use, but also with certain reservations. So, all this leads us to the question of how do you perceive the internet? Is the internet a democratic medium? Do we have any say in how we use the internet? Well, yes, of course we do. And no, we don't. Because the internet is a democratic medium, it does also mean that we have companies that can use the internet to leverage services. And we, as users, can decide whether to use or not use these services. The internet as a democratic medium was shown to be very successful, even only last week.
Yeah, of course the whole SOPA, PIPA, for those of you that aren't aware, actually a piece of legislation which was a position for legislation in the US, Stop Online Privacy Act, which would actually have consequences that ISPs could perform deep packet inspections, or were asked, or actually they're forced to do deep packet inspections, look into the messages we send, very much in breach of our privacy. I especially like the former name of SOPA, which is Enforcing and Protecting American Rights Against Sites Intent on Theft and Exploitation Act. So I think they thought SOPA had a better ring to it.
More funky.
More funky. And we saw that because Wikipedia started, they blacked out. You could see on Google, I think it was last Friday, that they put the black box on the Google logo, just trying to really activating the whole world, making everyone aware of what kind of consequences this kind of act would have on a global level. So from out the whole world, you heard an outcry. People were really against this piece of American legislation. And then you could see they've actually now postponed it. I think even the senator isn't backing it any longer. He doesn't want to propose it anymore. So that's actually where we see that the internet user from all over the world can really have power to stop legislation.
Yes, because, if there's any place where you can really start a grassroots movement, it's a social network, right? So that's the irony of the whole situation. We're using networks that we're not contented with because they use our personal data, but on the other hand, we use these networks to actually get politically active and get our rights as democratic users. That's really funny. The Europe versus Facebook people had a Facebook page. So that says enough. They are users, but they're discontented. They're not against Facebook, but they're against certain parts, the bad parts. So, summarizing this whole thing up. You can use your freedom. That's the democratic part of the internet. You can use a freedom of choice as a consumer to leverage change, to leverage these organizations to make changes to your benefit. If you share your information on these networks, share them wisely, your personal data, but do share them with the people you think you should share them with. Do it cautiously. And really what is key to this change, to these steps to be taken, is media literacy. We have to be literate, and we have to make those users that are particularly vulnerable for these networks, like showroom girls, aware that they are in a very big world and they are stepping out of their private space with a click of a button. It's really important.
And before we completely end the presentation, of course, what can you as a user have your rights and have power, but also the government, especially the European Union, is really working hard to actually protect our privacy. And to summarize that all, lovely film about
Yeah,
this.
from our friends of the European Union.
There are 500 million people from 27 countries living in the European Union. We have the right to live, work, travel and shop anywhere in Europe. We make over 1 billion cross-border trips every year, and 12 million of us live in another EU country. But sometimes we face barriers to our rights and our freedom to move across Europe. The European Union is working to make sure everyone benefits from the same rights in everyday situations. Your personal data will be safeguarded. 70% of EU citizens are concerned that their personal data may be misused. That's why the EU is working to strengthen your right to access, change or delete your data, as well as the right to be forgotten, letting you remove data after you no longer want it to be used. As a European citizen, your rights are protected at home, abroad and online.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
None.
You are like students, all of you. Even the non-students in the audience. Okay, well, if you do have questions, with hindsight, you can always find us on Facebook or mail us or whatever.
Okay.
Thank you.